He just told me the man looked creepy and
He said the man looked creepy.
creepy white. Excuse my language, cracker.
Okay, and what did you say? Okay, they're having trouble hearing you, so take your time.
Creepy ass cracker
Okay, creepy ass cracker.
was just looking at him, and I said, "Oh."
Okay.
All of us want to live in a safe place. I know that you want yourself and your loved ones to be safe. I know that your children look to you for their safety, whether you are of African descent, European descent, or Asian descent. I believe this is true for the parents of Trayvon Martin and the parents and loved ones of George Zimmerman. Today I'll expose how Zion Media has used the Trayvon Martin case to fan the flames of racial hatred and violence. Mark Twain said, "Never let the facts get in the way of a good story." And that about sums up the media coverage of the Trayvon Martin case. Here's the picture of Trayvon Martin that the media repeatedly shows you, this baby-faced, innocent-looking young man, looking perhaps 12 years old. Mark Twain also wrote, quote, "In a museum in Havana, there are two skulls of Christopher Columbus, one when he was a boy and one when he was a man." There may be two Columbuses in Havana, but there are also two Trayvon Martins in America. One of them is the innocent-looking little boy version shown to us by the Zion Media. But there's a big problem with this image. Martin wasn't a little boy any longer when the violence occurred in Sanford. Now here are Trayvon Martin's photos he himself published on his Twitter accounts just a few weeks before the shooting. One of his screen names was the gangster moniker of No Limit Nigga, and I won't repeat that word. In fairness, the pictures prove nothing. A nasty-looking picture of a man giving a finger does not prove he is guilty of any crime. But showing you pictures of Trayvon Martin looking like a 12-year-old betrays deceit by the media. Here's a Google News item showing articles on the Zimmerman case. Look at the picture next to the headline. George Zimmerman claims self-defense from Trayvon Martin. Now, what's your first reaction to that headline with that picture? My gut reaction is, how could he possibly need defense from that little boy? What would be your reaction with Martin's most recent pictures? The self-defense headline suddenly becomes more believable, doesn't it? Now let's look at some of the naked lies in the media coverage of the Trayvon Martin case. Here's a clip from the NBC Today show. This is exactly how they broadcast Zimmerman's 9/11 call to millions of unsuspecting Americans.
This guy looks like he's up to no good. He looks black.
Of course, NBC is trying to convey white racism motivated Zimmerman's actions. He looks suspicious, he looks black. But folks, it's all a big lie. Here's the actual 9/11 recording.
This guy looks like he's up to no good, or he's on drugs or something. It's raining and he's just walking around looking about.
Okay, and this guy, is he white, black, or Hispanic?
He looks black.
So in the original recording, the neighborhood watch captain doesn't say a word about the suspicious person's race. And only in response to a direct question as to if the person is white, black, or Hispanic does he answer. Now let's look at some real racism in the media. The mainstream news media in America has a long-standing policy to censor the race of criminal perpetrators or that of victims. The exception is when identification is needed in the pursuit of a suspect. On June 6, 2007, the Los Angeles Times newspaper made an official statement on race, reporting, quote, "In recent decades, newspapers and other media outlets stopped mentioning suspects or victims' race or ethnicity because of public criticism. Newspapers came to embrace the idea that such information is irrelevant to reporting of crimes and may unfairly stigmatize racial groups. But in the Trayvon Martin incident, the LA Times identified Zimmerman as white and Martin as a, quote, unarmed black teen. So obviously the LA Times does not worry about stigmatizing a racial group, well, at least when the group is white. The king of American journalism is the Zionist-owned and run New York Times. In March of 2011, 28 black males were sought in the horrific gang rape of an 11-year-old Hispanic girl in Cleveland, Texas.
Talking about that little girl in tiny Cleveland, Texas. She told her principal that she was gang raped. Well, now her town has been rocked by these allegations that 18 men and schoolboys, possibly more here, assaulted this 11-year-old child. A child. Think about that for a moment. The suspects, 18 of them, range in age from middle schoolers all the way up to a 27-year-old. Some of them allegedly recorded this gang rape on their cell phones, and they spread it around school. Court documents paint a brutal picture as to what happened as one young man, after another, forced that 6th grade girl into hours of sex. But the defense says the girl is not completely innocent. They say she consented. All that matters is that she is 11. You say the conversation about this story has gone in the wrong direction. Why?
Yeah, you know, I think the only thing that can make a crime this horrific, more horrific, is by blaming the victim.
The cross-race sexual attacks were even filmed on some of the rapists' cell phones. Philip Corbett, associate manager of the New York Times, confessed to censoring the race of the 28 black males sought for the rape of the Mexican girl. Black Panther Quinell X held a rally blaming the arrests on white racism, and he blamed the 11-year-old girl for being raped by 28 black males. The New York Times referred to the 100 blacks at the rally as, quote, Texans. To be honest, when you hear the word Texans, don't you automatically think of a Clint Eastwood type guy, a white guy with cowboy boots? Take a look. Do these accused rapists look like Clint Eastwood? The very same New York Times that covered up the race of 28 black rapists of an 11-year-old girl of a different race trumpeted that Zimmerman was white and that the victim was a black teen. In media across America, without a shred of evidence of racial motivation, white racism is alleged to be the cause of the incident by hundreds of media commentators. Even more sinister, white people in general are painted all guilty for the death of Trayvon Martin. There is not a shred of evidence that Zimmerman had a racist bone in his body against black people. Does it make sense to you that Zimmerman is racist when he and his wife have spent hundreds of hours mentoring black kids, when a longtime black friend swears that Zimmerman is the farthest thing from a racist?
But at its core, it is not a racial case.
And this brave black man spoke up publicly, even though he knew he'd suffer scorn and hatred for speaking out. But friends, it gets even more crazy. In actual fact, even though Zimmerman is labeled as a white man in the media, it turns out Zimmerman's race isn't even what the media itself describes as white. Here's a picture of one of George Zimmerman's family ancestors. Zimmerman is of mixed race and is no more white than his mixed race President Obama. Ask yourself, when will the media describe Obama as a white man? After a huge internet outcry, the media then began labeling Zimmerman as a white man of Hispanic descent. So when is the media going to label Obama as a white man of African descent? Well, about the time when pigs grow wings and fly. Like Twain said, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. A black teen is shot down for simply walking through a white neighborhood, nothing else.
Trayvon Martin, that unarmed teen who was shot while walking through a neighborhood.
complete with a little boy snapshot. The police photos showed brutal violence against Zimmerman, injuries to his body, face, and the back of his head. The only injury to Martin, other than the gunshot, was to the knuckles on his fists. Zimmerman had no injury to his fists.
Channel 9 has learned that the medical examiner found only 2 injuries on 17-year-old Trayvon Martin's body, his fatal gunshot wound and broken skin on his knuckles. The injury to Martin's knuckle also fits with Zimmerman's story that before he shot and killed Martin, Martin punched him and broke his nose, knocked him to the ground, and slammed his head on the sidewalk.
Trayvon Martin's knuckles obviously did not get injured after he was shot. And could George Zimmerman guide his broken nose or wounds to his head and body after Martin was shot? So folks, who attacked whom? Physical evidence powerfully shows that Zimmerman was the victim of physical assault, and nothing contradicts the idea that he acted in self-defense in a situation in which he feared for his life. And by the way, asking someone who they are, where they live, or what they're doing in your neighborhood is perfectly legal and obviously doesn't justify a brutal, life-threatening physical assault. But folks, when the Zio media purposely describes you as white, you can be sure you'll never be right. The media shamelessly inflame the African American community against white people. In the wake of this media anti-white hate fest, whites faced violence and incidents all over America.
Police are looking for a mob of teens who allegedly attacked 2 newspaper reporters.
Virginian Pilot reporters Marjan Rostami and Dave Forster told police they were attacked by a mob while at this intersection. Even though Forster was punched in the face several times and Rostami was hit in the head, cheek, and eye when she tried to pull her colleague and friend back inside, police coded the incident as a simple assault.
You're not from around here, or you don't know anybody around here, you're a target.
Editors hesitated to assign a story about their own employees, but printed it after tweets were found from people joking about the victims. The piece estimated there were up to 30 people in the crowd attacking the reporters.
And then with all that Trayvon Martin stuff going on, a lot of dumb stuff is happening.
Now I'll tell you about a horrific incident right in Sanford, Florida that the Zio media has hidden from you. You've been deluged with the name of Trayvon Martin, but unless you read davidduke.com, you've never heard the name of Mark Slavin. I'll tell you his story. At the height of the anti-white media frenzy surrounding the Martin case, a European-American, Mark Slavin, was brutally attacked by 2 African-American teenagers in the same small Florida community of Sanford, where the Trayvon Martin shooting occurred. The 2 black teenage gangsters, at 18 and 19, were just a little older than Trayvon Martin. They bashed in the head of Mark Slavin, 50, with 13 horrific blows with a hammer. As you listen to my words, Mr. Slavin still hovers between life and death. He clings to life support. His father reports that his son endured such terrible hammer blows to his head that he is still grotesquely unrecognizable. The arrested blacks are Yaziel Israel and Julius Bender. Israel's Facebook page displays pictures of the pair in their gangster persona, very similar to Trayvon Martin's posting. At least one of the attackers, Yaziel Israel, has a family association with the religious cult called Nation of Yahweh, a violent, black racist, anti-white cult that specializes in murdering and cutting off the body parts of its victims as trophies. Israel's Facebook page links to his father's page promoting the same black, violently anti-white racist cult. In the short article reporting the arrest of the 2 black suspects for the attack, unlike Trayvon Martin, the local newspaper did not even mention the name of the victim. Unlike Martin, they did not name the race of the victim. There was no mention of the connection to a murderous anti-white cult. No mention that the attack occurred at the height of a hateful frenzy against whites. And not a single national news story, not even a local mention of the name of the victim, Mark Slavin. who lived in the area as a popular local furniture store manager. Unlike Martin, no pictures of the victim and no interviews with the victim's grieving loved ones. Mark Slavin is just a faceless, nameless white victim that doesn't evoke the same kind of sympathy aroused when people psychologically connect with a name and face and family, as in the Trayvon Martin case. Now, how do you explain this blatant hypocrisy in the media? In fact, it is a reasonable assumption to blame the media for helping cause this attack because of the biased reporting in the Trayvon Martin case and other constant allegations of white racism that inflame black hatred and anger against white people. I think it takes a lot of vicious hatred to slam a hammer into the head of an innocent man 13 times. Of course, there is huge anger in the black community against white people. The media often portrays them as victims of white people, even innocent victims of white violence. But what is really true? Here are the figures right out of the U.S. crime data published by the U.S. Department of Justice. And by the way, this department's headed up by a dedicated black activist, Eric Holder. Blacks are about 39 times more likely to commit a violent crime against a white person than vice versa, and 136 times more likely to commit armed robbery against a white person than vice versa. My friend, let those facts sink in. 39 times more likely to commit a violent crime against a white person than vice versa. That is 3,900% higher. Not a 39% higher, which would be bad enough, but a 3,900% higher rate of committing violent crimes against white people than white people committing violence against black people. And think that the Zio media has had thousands of stories about evil white people doing shopping discrimination against blacks or stopping blacks for police checks.
I did actually feel sorry for the girl.
Will you do something next time?
I wouldn't have got involved, no, because it's nothing to do with me.
But she needed your help. Someone has to sound the alarm.
But I don't know her.
The two customers have just witnessed a type of discrimination so common that researchers have given it a name: shopping while black.
But for some reason, if blacks murder or rob or rape tens of thousands of white people, that doesn't matter. Let's do our next story on shopping discrimination, right? The fact that the media would portray blacks and black kids as chronic victims of white violence is not only racist, it's absolutely a reversal of the truth and is perpetuated by the biggest conglomerates in the Zio media. I'm not quoting these facts to condemn black folks. I'm showing how the media actually suppresses the truth and actually inflames more black violence against white people. It's best illustrated by the New York Times op-ed piece by one of its black mouthpieces, Charles Blow, on March 16, 2012. Mr. Blow writes about Trayvon and the specter of racial discrimination again and again. Finally, he says, as the father of two black teenage boys, this case hits close to home. This is the fear that seizes me whenever my boys are out in the world. That is the burden of black boys in America and the people that love them, running the risk of being descended upon in the dark and caught in the crosshairs of someone who crosses the line. Mr. Blow suggests that every time his kids are out of the house, he sees with fear that some white person will shoot one of his sons. Come on, Mr. Blow. Is this what really scares you? White folks with itchy trigger fingers? You must know it is infinitely more possible and likely that your son will be shot by a black man with an itchy trigger finger than by a white man. Mr. Blow, shouldn't your real fear be the gangbangers, the drug dealers, the violent criminals that plague the black community and who also rack up a huge number of victims in the white community as well? Shouldn't real anger be against the Zio media moguls who make violence and drugs and indiscriminate sex fashionable for young blacks? And look at the facts, Mr. Blow. It's not white folks shooting blacks. It's black folks shooting black folks. And they're shooting a hell of a lot of whites too. In fact, the Zion media supports programs aimed at stopping, quote, black on black crime.
There is one thing that keeps happening too much on the streets of Cincinnati: African Americans shooting and killing one another.
We're caught up in, should I call it black on black violence? Well, if that gets your attention to say that it's a problem, then let me catch your attention.
In fact, the latest crime figures, though, show blacks actually commit more violent crime against whites than they do against blacks. Now, if you're a white listening right now, don't you get it? According to the Zion media, crimes against you don't matter. The life of your father or mother or sister or brother or son or daughter, they don't matter. Black on black crime, black victims, that matters. But you don't.
Thing that keeps happening too much on the streets of Cincinnati: African Americans shooting and killing one another.
I think every victim matters. Blow and the media portrayal of black victims of white crime are ridiculous, and perhaps even more sinister than the newspaper propaganda is what is seen in the movies and on television. Here's a small example of vicious anti-white racism and hatred promoted by the media. Here is a clip of a trailer promoting the new Tarantino film made by the Zionist Weinstein brothers called Django Unchained. The hero of the movie is a black man who suffers unspeakably from white people. He is portrayed as cool, brave, a hero, a caring husband, a true role model for young black males. And here's the clip right out of the trailer.
Kill white folks and they pay you for it? What's not to like? I like the way you die, boy.
Now, if you can't see the violent racism, just turn it around and imagine a movie about a white man whose wife and kids are raped and murdered by black home invaders. The guy is portrayed as a sympathetic, brave, cool, a hero kind of role model for young whites. And the white hero says, quote, kill black people and get paid for it? What's not to like? And this is the hero? And there are plenty more viciously racist, even violence-inciting anti-white movies out there made by Zio Hollywood. Now you might be wondering why I talk of Zio Hollywood or Zio Media. I'm simply quoting the Los Angeles Times Zionist columnist Joel Stein. He wrote an article headlined, "How Jewish is Hollywood?" First, he states the undeniable facts proving that his tribe controls Hollywood and the media. He says, quote, Jews totally run Hollywood. And then he goes on to write, I don't care if Americans think we're running the news media, Hollywood, Wall Street, or the government. I just care that we get to keep running them. There are also a number of courageous Jews, like Gilad Atzmon, who oppose this elite Zionist extremist core that harms Gentiles of all races, and ultimately the Jewish people too. So I ask you, why do the Weinstein brothers, Ziowood, and the Zio media make these kinds of movies and promote anti-white hate in the Trayvon Martin case? To African Americans who are listening, I ask you sincerely, why are the ones who make viciously anti-white films the same ones who are hurting your children and your community? How about the Ziowood movies that teach your kids that drugs are cool and fashionable? How many millions of African Americans have had their lives ruined by drugs?
Look, man, I know you're not a drug guy, and I respect that about you, but right now, this is what you need.
What is it?
It's ecstasy. It'll put the brakes on your little freak out. Just take it.
All right. Just won't totally like me up, will it?
Of course it will, dude. That's the whole point. Here. Hey, you get a half of one.
It's ecstasy, bro!
How about the Zio movies that teach your kids that abusing alcohol is cool and fashionable? But how many millions of people have had their lives ruined by violence or drunk driving or sickness inspired by alcohol abuse and addiction? How about the Ziowood movies and Zio music industry that promote sexual degeneracy, even disrespect and defilement and violence against women? How many millions of African Americans have suffered from sexual disease, broken families? How many millions of your children are born without fathers and their mothers burdened to raise their child alone? And don't get me wrong, Ziowood has been just as destructive to whites as well as blacks. Tens of millions of European American lives have been ruined by the evil and sickness promoted by the media. What I'm saying to you is that both of our peoples have the same problem. And if you are a white person, you must realize that the source of this hateful anti-white racism that has contributed to the horrific numbers of racist hate crimes against whites has come from the same Zio media. The hateful anti-white reporting of the Trayvon Martin case was not done by black-owned media, but by the Zio media. The Hollywood that makes sick, violence-promoting anti-white hate films like Django are not produced and promoted by black folks, but by the Weinstein brothers. Gangster rap and its culture of drugs and violence and defilement and violence against women was made popular by the Zio music conglomerates, like Super Zionist Summer Redstone, Rothstein of MTV. Read my books and find out who really runs the media. Black people and brown people didn't change the immigration laws in America. In fact, black people and Americans of Hispanic descent lose jobs by mass immigration, just like white people do. In Europe, Arab Muslims aren't the ones who changed the immigration laws and opened their borders. They are not the ones controlling your media and leading you like lemmings to ethnic and national suicide.
They reach the final precipice. This is the last chance to turn back. Yet over they go.
They are not the media moguls that tell you and your children to hate yourselves and celebrate your own genocide. They aren't the ones telling you to have abortions and live a hedonistic lifestyle. It's not black people or brown people who are stealing your money, trillions right out of your own pockets with the predator banks like Goldman Sachs and the Zionist Club Fed and the World Bank and the IMF. It's not black people or brown people who bribe your politicians and lead us into these insane wars for Israel and Iraq and now the planned war against Iran. As I said when I started, I truly believe that you, whether you're black or white or Asian, Indian, Amerindian, whatever, want your kids to be safe and sound. It is time for all of us to see how we're being programmed to hate each other rather than seeing how the real enemy, who has the real supremacy over all of us, is harming us all. It's exactly what Joel Stein boasted about. Hollywood, the news media, Wall Street, and government. They want non-whites to hate whites, and they want whites to hate themselves. Why? Because they see whites as their biggest competitor for political, media, economic power in America and in every European populated nation. Please watch my film, How the Zionists Divide and Conquer. But I believe we are starting to wake up. Their power is based on illusion just as much as their fictional films in which somebody can fly without wings. It's time we clip those imaginary wings. We are the vast majority. All we've got to do is stand up with courage and honor. More and more of us are standing up. How about you? You can start by sending this video to all your friends and family. And if you wish, you could give me the support I need to produce more videos just like this one, because somebody has to tell the whole truth. Our time is coming. Every people on earth has the right to be free and independent, rather than slaves in the matrix of Zionist globalism.